My dear friends, good evening and welcome to a special edition of the Bill Crane Report. And a special show it will be, as we have as our guest Sergeant Robert Shannon of the Norfolk Police Department. Dwayne and I are thrilled to have Bob with us, and we will have other guests joining us in upcoming weeks. The list includes House Painter Extraordinaire Peter Hildebrand, Town Administrator Jack Hathaway, Selectman Jim Lehan, our State Rep Sean Dooley, and one of the nicest ladies and one of my favorite people that I know, Thelma Ravinsky, is going to come on and talk about the Historical Society. I've extended invites to a handful of other folks, and they are wisely or cautiously giving this due consideration. The sticking points seem to be lawsuits, death threats, or total personal embarrassment. Now, I ask you, Dwayne, would we embarrass any of our guests? I mean, deliberately,
No, we embarrass ourselves every time. So.
Good. I'm glad we're on the same page there. So, just a note to these bashful few would be shape up and get in here and take your medicine. Now, without further ado, I would like to just make some brief comments about the election and about our president's talk last night. The election story. Republicans won nearly all the important races, with more wins to come, and especially in Louisiana. They extended their majority in the House. I hear stuff like, now we'll repeal Obamacare, and it's payback time. And this is the purest form of lunacy imaginable. This is wrong. We are supposed to be the adults, the grown-ups. We're supposed to lead. Think about it. Learn from two of the most brilliant men this country ever produced, General George Marshall and General Douglas MacArthur. When we defeated Germany and Japan, did we lord it over them? Did we grind them and squeeze them and punish them? No, we rebuilt them. We need to understand something else and understand it clearly. The Republican victories were in actuality Democratic losses. They were defeated because of Obama, the Congress, and the direction of our country. The people dislike and distrust all politicians and the president. The exit polls show this. We cannot afford to do a victory dance. We have a brief honeymoon to stand up for Americans and fight for change. We do not have time to be vindictive. We must be positive, not negative. We're the grown-ups. Don't forget that. There is plenty to work on. Many good jobs have disappeared. The worker participation rate is at a historic low. We have high levels of poverty and homelessness. The Defense Department's been crippled by cuts in their budget. This must be fixed. Race relations have never been addressed by this president. It's up to the Republicans to address race relations. We now have a dysfunctional, expensive health system. If you like your health plan, you can keep your health plan, was a blatant lie. We've got to fix this. Our foreign policy is in shambles. We have ineptitude at all levels of government. So much for the fairy tale of recruiting the best and the brightest. We must address immigration, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. We must get the economy and America going again. We don't have time for theatrics. Which brings us to the president's talk last night. It changes nothing. It is much ado about nothing. But once again, the Republicans took the bait, and they're huffing and puffing and strutting about indignantly like a witless barnyard rooster. But yet, we can't seem to understand what this is all about. So shut up and address the immigration issue like adults, and then produce a plan for the American people. That's it, folks. That's my tantrum for this week. And now, our guest, Mr. Robert Shannon. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill.
And for those that don't know you, perhaps a thumbnail. I know you're a longtime Norfolk resident, attended Norfolk schools. Maybe you can fill in the blanks a little bit.
Well, Bill, I moved to Norfolk in 1973, and as you said, I attended the Norfolk schools. Worked locally at Walpole for Mrs. Green at Glen Green Farm, and for Gail Anderson and Dr. Anderson on the Anderson Farm, Swamp Fox Farm on Needham Street, and became a police officer in 1985.
Now, how did you decide to become a police officer, Bob?
Well, Bill, I've always admired police officers, and I remember as a young child growing up in Boston, my parents would always tell me, if you're in trouble, see a policeman. And I admired the policemen and their ability to help. And when I moved to Norfolk, I remember role models like George Catapodis and Bill Mayo, and even guys like Chucky Stone and Paul Murphy were around when.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie Ray.
Charlie Ray, of course. Yeah, good old Charlie. My first sergeant. On Midnight.
Was one of my best friends
Yeah.
ever. Great guy, great guy.
Yeah,
So you had good role models.
I did.
Yeah. And now you've recently returned from an intensive training program at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia.
Indeed.
Tell us about that.
Well, Bill, I trained with police officers from around the country and around the world. Police officers from 49 states, including Alaska and Hawaii. And every state in the Union was represented except for South Dakota.
South Dakota.
South Dakota.
Busy pumping the oil out there.
Something. Bill, a lot of the officers drove, and they drove days. One officer in particular sticks out in my mind. He said he drove 4.5 days, and I said, that's 5 days. He drove from Washington State. And some of these guys thought it'd be a great opportunity to see the world, or to see the country. I was dreading the 8-hour drive from Norfolk to Virginia. And there were officers from 26 countries, including North Korea, Japan, France, England, Canada, Aruba, all around the world. And the officer that traveled the furthest actually came from New Zealand.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how many all told were in your class?
So there were 211 of us.
211.
Yes.
Okay.
What was the objective of the course?
So the FBI National Academy is thought to be, or said to be, advanced training for police executives. And it's become a prerequisite to become a police chief throughout the country.
Wonderful. That sounds terrific. What was a typical day like for you down there, Bob?
So I was concerned, Bill, because we were going to be sharing dorm rooms with 3 other officers, and we would have to share one bathroom. And so I spoke with fellow NA grad, Walpole Police Chief Rick Stillman.
Ricky's a good friend.
Yeah, and Rick gave me some of my best advice. And he said, get up early and use the bathroom first and get out. So I started the day at 6 a.m. in the shower and out by 6:15. Out of the room by 6:30 and off for breakfast.
You didn't have any PT in the morning or anything?
So we had PT in groups. There were 210 of us, and we were broken up into 6 squads and 5 groups, and we PT'd in our individual groups. So PT was 2 or 3 times a week, and then on Wednesday we had what was called a challenge day. And that would consist of some type of physical challenge, either running a 5K, or some days we were doing circuit training, up, downs, push-ups, pushing a sled like you see football players doing, and bands, running with bands. We'd have a band around our waist and a fellow officer holding us back as we tried to drag them forward. Phenomenal training. I've tried to continue some of that training back at home.
You know, of all the stuff we did in basic training in the Army, the one thing that sticks in my mind, I hope they didn't have you guys do, but they took our entire company, which would have been 240, 250 guys, and 125 on one end, 125 on the other end of a football field. And they blow a whistle. And you had to get, your whole team had to get to the other end and over the goal line before the other team did. 125 guys running directly at each other.
Yeah.
They didn't do that, huh?
No, fortunately.
Ah,
no.
gee. You missed that. So after you had breakfast, how was the food, by the way?
So the first few days, the food wasn't bad. You got to keep in mind they were cooking for 500 people. There were 3 or 4 classes of new agents, and there were analysts being trained there, and the 211 of us. So the first few days, the food wasn't bad. It was a good variety. Every day they had eggs and cereal and toast and fruits. Some days pancakes, the bacon and sausage, and on weekends you could make a waffle, and sometimes they had omelets. I generally tried to stick with cereal, the basics. Oatmeal, I had a lot of oatmeal.
Oatmeal's good.
And a lot of grits.
Grits are good.
Yeah,
too.
I enjoyed the grits. But after the first few days, the food, it was repetitious. As much as they tried to give us a variety, we had chicken at every lunch and at every dinner. And then they had other meals, other courses as well. We had an opportunity to have, they had pork chops and they had some steak, believe it or not. But it's institution food.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
With a group that large, you
Yeah,
can't do much.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Right.
remember my Army days.
Yeah.
Now, did you get to go off post at all?
So we did. Fortunately, I drove, and that's why a lot of the officers drove. So you're required to bring a tremendous amount of material with you. You have to bring clothes and everything, and you have to bring supplies to wash those clothes. You have to bring a uniform and a suit, and office supplies, a printer, a computer.
Oh my.
Oh yeah, all these things. So it's difficult to ship.
Yep.
The international students had to ship it, but all the officers from the U.S. basically they drove and they were able to carry all their equipment and material with them. So I had a vehicle, I had my car with me, and for the international students or others that didn't have a car, we became a very tight group, and you just had to wait in the lobby, and someone would ask you if
Sure.
you wanted to ride or
Sure.
you wanted to go to dinner. Yeah.
Good. Now, so you get breakfast under your belt.
Yeah, breakfast under the belt, and then
Now what happens?
Yeah, go back to the room, and I fortunately had internet access, and I would read the Morning Globe, keep up with what's going on in Massachusetts and around the world. And 9 o'clock, our first class started, and my first class on Monday morning was contemporary issues in media relations and law enforcement. It was a great class. It was taught by a former ABC affiliate news reporter, Gil Pennybacher. She did a great job. And we had actually a setting just very similar to this. The equipment wasn't as modern, but they were working on that. And we did a scenario like this. And then we also trained for a press release, a press conference, and a stand-up interview. It was great training. And one of my other classes was in labor law. I had the gentleman that taught the class was a field agent for many years. He was also an attorney, and he returned to the National Academy and taught labor law. And on that note, Bill, that we were given a course catalog similar to college courses.
Correct.
Yeah. And we got to pick and choose what classes we wanted. They had classes on death investigation and forensics and on event planning, for like things at like the stadium or
Sure.
big parades or the marathon and things like that. I tried to take things that would be more applicable to Norfolk. I took the media class, and I took a labor law class, and I took a class in leadership, psychology of leadership. Great class, great instructor, and I had a class which I thought was very instrumental as well, was managing change in police organizations.
Boy, I'll tell you, in my corporate career, managing change would have been a great course for me
Yeah.
because, boy, do I get stuck in place.
I think
fight
both of us
change.
do. We're that age.
Yeah.
We don't like change.
Yeah.
We just,
Yeah.
Well, I think
not
it goes
comfortable
with
with it.
New England.
Yeah, that too.
I never liked it when I was young.
Yeah.
I even get irritated. I go into a store and they move things around.
Talk to me about it. Yeah.
So the PT class, we had PT 3 times a week, and our PT instructor was a former NFL trainer. I forget what team he worked for, but totally
He was
committed.
in shape, huh?
He didn't lift weights. He believed mostly, in doing the circuit training and cardio stuff. We used medicine balls and bands and lightweight, kettlebell.
Agility stuff.
Agility, yeah. And he wanted to keep our backs in good shape. A lot of law enforcement officers spend so much time sitting.
Yeah, a lot of law enforcement officers go out with bad
Yeah,
backs.
sure. Back. Yep. So great training, and a lot of you may have seen the movie, The Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah,
of
sure.
course.
Sure. So when they're doing that, they show the obstacle course. We actually participated in that obstacle course.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they call it the Yellow Brick Road, and it's cargo nets and pilings and telephone pole hurdles and water hazards. It was a 10K run. It was quite an experience. And some of your viewers and yourselves may have seen me training. I trained for 3 months
I
running.
remember that.
Yeah, before I went to the NA, I wanted to be.
Did it pay off, Bob?
It sure did.
Yeah.
So I would run 3 days a week, and on my middle day, I was running. I called it the hill course, and it was Pond Street, up the hills and back. It was a 4-mile run, and Pond Street's a pretty steep hill.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
there are
is.
some.
Until you see this hill on the Marine Corps base. Holy
When
cow,
going
it was like
downhill,
this.
it's all right, though.
Going downhill is probably more dangerous, but it was, oh boy, what a hill. So
You know what that sounds like? The confidence course.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's the conference course,
Yeah.
the Marine book
Yeah.
base conference course at Quantico Marine
Yeah,
Corps.
we, I'll never forget in basic training, we did it in December down at Fort Dix, and we had probably that much wet snow. And then the next day it rained and it turned to mud, and we did the low crawl through all of that. That was a great night. And you know what they rewarded us with afterwards, Bob? A 14-mile forced march.
Oh boy.
Full pack.
You were cold, I was hot. Because I was there, I was in Missouri in August.
Fort Leonard Wood.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fort Austin Woods.
Yeah, one of my classmates was not far from there, from Missouri. I actually just communicated him via email yesterday.
You know, I was going to ask you, you keeping in touch with some of the guys?
Sure. So, Bill, I wasn't a big social media guy. I'm kind of a private person, and I wasn't really involved in that. But when I was at the National Academy at the media class, they highly recommended that we get involved with social media, Facebook, Twitter, and others. And I actually I joined Facebook, and I've been able to keep up with my classmates on Facebook.
Wonderful.
That's
Good.
That's
It's a great
terrific.
way to keep
Yeah.
contact.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. What other courses did you take?
So I took those 4 courses, and then I took one class that was going to be for me. It would be something that I thought I would find really interesting. Well, it was interesting, but it was tough.
Good.
Sure, we had to do a midterm test, and the midterm was a take-home. So you think a take-home is going to be fairly easy. I spent 9 hours one night just doing, and I still didn't finish the take-home midterm.
It was probably designed that way.
Oh, I'm sure it was. This guy, he was a field agent, and he had done many things, and he worked in the behavioral science unit at the FBI. Some of you may be familiar with that from some of the TV shows. And he did profiling of terrorists, and really interesting guy. So smart that he had to hold his own conference and bring in people from around the world to meet at his conference. And they came from MIT and UCal and all around the world, as I said. And they discussed things like biorobotics and 3D printing, and believe it or not, 4D printing. I didn't know there was a fourth dimension,
didn't
but
either.
they
I know
do
3D
four-dimensional printing.
Really?
And computers and machines that self-replicate, and some really interesting stuff. He showed us the outline of what was going to be discussed. Really smart guy.
Did you learn from the show? Was it Bob, or
Oh,
was it just too difficult?
No, you know what, Bill? I took a class, that class, and we had to write a paper, and on criminal organizations. And one of my classmates was from Rhode Island, and he wrote on the mafia. Yeah, great presentation. And a couple of guys did presentations on motorcycle gangs, outlaw motorcycle gangs.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wow. And then I saw one officer listed that he was going to do the another criminal organization called the Sovereign Citizens. And I had read a couple of years ago that one of neighboring towns had had an incident with a sovereign citizen. And I said, I don't really know much about him. I'm going to do my research paper on the sovereign citizens. So I did a 10-page paper on sovereign citizens, and then about a 20-minute presentation to the class on the material that I learned about the sovereign citizens.
What are the sovereign citizens?
So sovereign citizens, it goes back to, believe it or not, to like Nazi groups. And the sovereign citizens are they're people that they're anti-tax, anti-government groups and individuals. They tend to mostly be in very small groups and individuals, and they consider themselves sovereign unto themselves. You know.
Are these the folks that retreat to the wilds of Idaho?
Like the militias that go into the woods and stuff?
So some of them are militia, and some of them are right-wing extremist and racist groups.
Yep.
And so sovereign citizen is kind of a catch-all phrase
Okay.
for all of those groups.
Anti-government.
Absolute anti-government, anti-tax, and they create their own documents, their own driver's licenses, and then actually some of them have taken over and squatted in homes, abandoned homes during this past economic downturn. And when faced by law enforcement, oftentimes they will take a personal attack on the police officer or law enforcement agent and bring the courts to bear on them. They'll sue them, they'll put a lien on their house, all this madness. And actually, I read about one woman from New York who refused to license her dog. That's how basic they can be. And it was a $15 fine. It had bogged down the courts quite a bit. There were hundreds of entries on her record just for this one case. And finally, the district attorneys dismissed it because of the resources it was wasting, and she considered that a victory. She won.
Yep. Well,
Wow.
I think the philosophy behind that is to make you as a law enforcement professional afraid to go after them, or
Yes,
hesitant to go
sure,
after them
yeah.
for anything. Then,
Right.
if they do it with the little things, then you think they're going to start thinking to get away for the bigger.
Exactly.
Yeah, we had an incident a few years ago. I'm from the Midwest, and we fly in and out of Minneapolis all the time. And there was this Islamic group that got on a plane. You remember when they started to see something, say something?
Yes.
They wouldn't sit in their seats. They kept going up to the front. They get all kinds of stuff from people, and they all asked for seat extensions, and they only weighed about 90 pounds apiece. You know, and they were swinging them around and everything. And so then, you know, of course, that threw up some lot of red flags on that flight. So they diverted the flight, took them off. Then they started suing. They sued everybody
were
on
on that
that
flight?
plane that said, you better check that guy.
Yeah.
To make people afraid to see something, to say something.
Yeah.
It was all a philosophy to get that.
Sure.
Let's hope there was a decent judge that threw the whole.
I don't know what
damn
happened after
thing
that.
out.
I'm sure there was, but
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So, law enforcement here in New England must be different than law enforcement in the Midwest or the South or the West Coast, because there's all different challenges. Luckily, I think, it would seem to me that this is a much calmer area of the country. Or is that, have I got that backwards?
Well, Bill, I think that we all face challenges in law enforcement, and we all have similar problems, just different people to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. In how impressed were you with the course, Bob? Likes and dislikes.
So I can't say enough about the training.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really good?
It was
it sounds
tremendous.
intense.
Yeah, it was intense. 10 weeks.
Oh, 10 weeks.
Oh yeah, 10 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and it's transferable credits from the University of Virginia, and so tremendous training. The bad thing, there's no place like home. It was tough being away for the whole summer.
Yeah, that kind of throws a wrinkle in things.
It does. Fortunately, Virginia, like New England this summer, had a very mild summer. We only had a couple of black flag days, and black flag days were when the temperature got above 90 degrees. There was no outdoor PT. But there were just a couple of those days, and there's no place like home. I got the opportunity to come home a couple times. It
You
made
did?
a big, yeah, it did. It made a big difference. Yeah,
But you flew.
yeah, I flew. Yeah, I wouldn't drive.
No.
No. And the flight, they know they got you. You know, you take the shuttle and it's $500 or more, and to fly off week, you know, the wife came down to see me for graduation, $78. Yeah.
So they knew
got
you had you. They hosed you.
Yeah, they know they got you. Yeah.
Oh boy.
So, Bill, you asked about if we got an opportunity to go off campus.
Yeah.
Well, so we did. Sometimes during the week, if I got a chance, I'd go down to Starbucks and do some homework at Starbucks. I enjoy sitting and having a coffee and doing a little people watching while I'm, yeah. And we actually also, as a group, took a couple of trips. There were over close to 100 of us that went to New York City. It was a trip sponsored by our New York City classmates, and we got to see the inner workings of the NYPD. They have a real-time crime center. So, Bill, they have they have a setup with Dwayne. They have a setup. It looks like a cinema. A couple of rows of consoles and several screens, 20 or 30 screens. They have cameras throughout the city, and people watching the cameras and at computers, and they're a resource for officers and detectives if they're working on a crime.
Sort of like a control center.
It's a control center, sure. They call it the real-time crime center.
Yep.
And those people will do backgrounds on individuals that you're investigating at the time. They'll run their record and their history throughout the city. And they can also link into the cameras. You know, some of that stuff you see on TV is not as far-fetched as you would like to think. Then we had an opportunity to go to their emergency training, their emergency response team. That was unbelievable. So New York City, it was said, is like, has their own military.
Right.
They have a Navy with all their boats. They have an Air Force. They have 7 helicopters. One or more is unmarked that patrol the city. They have 25,000 police officers or more. It's a tremendous
Yeah,
number of
I-
police
yeah,
officers.
yeah.
And on Sunday morning of our trip to New York, we got to go to we were staying right around the corner from the UN, and they do a call out, I think once a week call out, and this time they had the call out at the UN, and there were 300 or more police officers that responded to the
Wow.
UN.
Yeah.
It was very impressive. And while we were there, we got to go to the 9/11 museum.
Oh, yeah.
And it just opened. That was a moving experience. You know, we were so close. I remember when it occurred in, where was that one? Oklahoma, when the Oklahoma bombing
Oh,
occurred.
yeah, yeah.
It was like, you really felt it, but when it was, you know, that was 2,000 miles away. When it was
Yeah.
in New York, that's 300 miles.
Yeah.
You really felt that. So it was a very moving experience for us to go there. And we saw the 9/11 memorials, the footprint of the
Yeah.
North Tower and the South Tower, and the names of all the victims etched into the stone. And inside the memorial, it's underground, and it's actually the footing to one of the towers is still there. You actually walk around the footing.
Really?
Oh yeah, and fire trucks. You know, they responded when they responded. Some of the trucks went into the underground garage, and there was a fire truck. They didn't move it. It was basically right where they found it.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of heroes that day.
There were a lot of heroes.
And a terrible waste of innocent life.
Yeah, it sure was.
Yeah. You know, off the subject just a little bit, one of the least impressive things I have ever seen in my life is out in Oklahoma City, the memorial that they made to those people that were killed in that courthouse bombing. It's little stools. There's a reflection pool, and there's little stools arranged. What was it, 184, 186 people,
yeah,
something like that.
something like that, right.
And that's what they got, 186 little stools around it. And it just didn't do anything for me, I'll tell you. But that's an aside. Well, so it sounds like this was a heck of an experience, Bob.
Oh, it sure was.
Yeah.
It sure
Now,
was.
this is going to make you a better police officer. How?
Well, I have, through the experience itself, I've become more knowledgeable, and I've increased my abilities, and I have a network of people that I can reach out to.
I would imagine it was a confidence builder, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you say, you know, when you're faced with a situation, I can handle this, or
Right.
I know the right thing to do, or I have a
Absolutely.
better handle on the right thing to do. Yeah, training is a great thing.
Yeah.
Was there range training involved?
So there was no range training involved, but when I heard the first week, it's like the military. It's hurry up and wait.
Of course.
So on Monday, and Sunday and Monday, it's hurry up and wait, and I'm like, I'm gonna have free time. I can't hurry up. So they had offered a class in chemical munitions and law enforcement,
Yep.
chemical agents. So and I heard that they got to shoot things.
I can imagine what that might be involved.
Yeah. So yeah, I spoke with the instructor, and he happened to be an FBI agent from Worcester, and he said that it was a great class, and I asked if there was any exposure to the agents. I didn't want to have to go through CS or...
And down that road, it's not
I
fun.
already been there, right? Been there, done that, don't want to do it again. And he said, no, there was no exposure, but it would be a great class and a great experience. So I took that class, and we had the opportunity to use grenade launches to shoot smoke grenades. And we used, we threw handheld smoke grenades and learned how to deploy smoke and tear gas. And we also used less lethal firearms. Very interesting training, really good training.
The beanbag guns?
Yeah, bean bags and
bullets.
rubber bullets. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's great. That is great. By gosh.
Do we have that in Norfolk? Beanbags?
We
or
do.
anything like we do.
As a matter of fact, one of our offices is involved. Glenn Eichel is involved in a regional emergency response team, and he is the team leader for the less lethal agents.
You know, I've always felt that this type of lengthy, intensive course helps you form friendships and ushers in great cross-pollination as your classmates relate things that has happened on their watch. Did you folks have a chance to do that sort of thing, or were you so bloody busy there wasn't a whole lot of time for that?
So every day we exchange experiences.
Yeah.
And one class, the instructor said that he was gonna conduct the class like a conductor, and that we would actually be teaching the class.
Oh, wow.
And it would just be his role to conduct the way the class flowed. So I happened to be there during the Ferguson incident.
Oh, boy.
And we talked about the Ferguson matter in almost every class.
Yeah.
And one of my classmates, you know, that came from 49 states, actually he policed 7 miles south of Ferguson. He was familiar with Ferguson. He was familiar with the landscape and the people and the demographics of.
You know, I've been out there in that area.
I wasn't aware of that.
Well, I hit them all, Bob, except South Dakota, constantly. But I found that part of the world, and I don't mean to paint with a wide brush, but it's pretty redneck. Ferguson. St. Louis is sort of a redneck city.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, Bill. But what we did talk about was the failure to prepare for a situation like that. And it seemed that the law enforcement and the politicians failed to integrate and failed to make legions with the social leaders, with the community leaders, with the priests and the reverends and the community. So when the incident occurred, there was no one to fall back on, no one to stand
Right.
Well, they have
side by
they have
side
the same
and
thing
say,
in-
you know,
yeah, they have
remain.
the same thing in Boston.
Well,
And some of the incidents that have happened in there where the community's leaders say, we're not communicating, we're not talking, you know? It's tough, Bob.
yeah,
It
sure
really and truly
I think a
is
situation
tough.
like Ferguson came out so fast.
Yeah.
There was no press for
Yeah,
it.
but you know what? I'll bet you anything, in the stuff I've read anyway, some of the more background stories, look, it was festering for quite a while in
Of
that
course,
town.
the element's always there.
Yeah.
and that's falls on the leaders, community leaders, both.
Community policing.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what it falls
It
down
really.
to. Yeah.
I mean, you've got to talk to the community.
Right?
Yeah.
At all levels.
Yeah, all levels. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I'm sure there were surprises. What were you surprised with out there, Bob, in the course?
Surprises. Well,
The intensity? Was it
No,
how much they jammed down your throat?
I knew it was going to be very intense. I had the opportunity to speak with several graduates. Yeah. Surprises? No.
You're pretty well prepared for it.
I think I was.
Well,
Yeah.
that's great.
How often is this course run?
So it's run 4 times a year.
4 times a year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this the first time Norfolk's been represented?
So, as a matter of fact, the chief
You know?
is an NA grad,
Okay.
and he attended the National Academy in, I believe, the early 90s, perhaps in like 1994.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember when Chucky went.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about any of the surrounding towns?
Rentham has offices that have gone. Walpole has offices. I'm sure there are other.
How are they chosen, Bob?
So you have to be nominated, and Chief Stone nominated me. And then there's a pretty intense application process that you go through. And it's actually a 2-year process.
Really?
Yeah. It includes a background
I
investigation.
imagine they vet you pretty good
Oh, yeah,
before
they
they
do.
let you down there.
They do. They do. And an agent came out and spent a morning with me discussing my personnel file, and
Okay.
they want you to commit to 3 more years of law enforcement after attending the
Sure.
National
Well, that
Academy.
would make sense, sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, interesting note, Bill, was that the average age of the students there was 42.
Well, you know what, Bob? I'm not surprised, because you're certainly not going to take 28-year-olds or 24-year-olds and send them out there when they may say, you know what, law enforcement's not for me. They're looking for the people that are career law, at least I would hope they are, because this is tax dollar money.
Yeah, indeed.
But they're looking for the people who have a proven track record and have committed to law enforcement as a career.
Yes, Bill. And as we went around the room introducing ourselves in the first first few days of classes, it turned out that the average was 20 years law enforcement experience.
20 years. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
That's good.
Yep. And these guys, they were all at the pinnacle of their career. They had done many things: leaders, SWAT leaders, and leaders of detective divisions and patrol divisions. Really, it was a great opportunity to.
And the
train.
individual towns and communities are going to send down their best people. I mean, they're not going to send down someone who's going to reflect poorly.
Absolutely.
So
right.
it's the top flight guys that get to go.
Yeah, they say that it's the top 1% in law enforcement that gets to attend the National Academy.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's great. It must have been a great
it
experience.
sure was.
That's terrific. Just talking broadly as a police officer, now that you're back, what do you see as your biggest challenge as a police officer, Bob?
Wow, my biggest challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I talked to one of the guys on the force, and I asked him that. He's a young guy. He said, sometimes staying awake. He said, not a lot happens in Norfolk. But,
Yeah.
but you know, what was a joke, you know, but
Sure.
but what do you see as, how do you say to yourself, I'm going to do the best job I can? How do you go about that, Bob?
So, Bill, to go about doing the best job I can, this is an example of it right here, and it goes back to community policing. I think that as police officers, we have to be approachable, and we have to be out in the community.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
You know,
Now, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Take the black glass out of the cars.
Oh. So, as I was saying,
And why is that?
Why? Because you don't know who's in there. I mean, you want, I'm not saying you want a happy face out there, but, you know, so that you can target. Not target, that's a bad word
No,
too.
that's all right.
Choice of words.
But so that you can identify that that's a human being.
So, Bill, when I'm in the patrol car, if it's warm out, the window's down. I want people to see me,
Yep.
and I want them to know it was me in their neighborhood.
Yep.
That
Exactly.
and that they can come up to me, you know. And
When you see kids at the end of a cul-de-sac shooting hoops, you want to be able to wave to them or get out of the car and go over there and take a couple of foul shots.
I've taken a couple of shots myself. I'm not very good at it, but
You got to. That's it. I mean, that's talking to the community.
yeah. Yeah, I remember as a kid growing up that at 5 o'clock every day, you knew where to find the chief of police.
Yep.
He was at Andy's having coffee with Eddie Betancourt and Campbell and Sam Johnson.
And he was an approachable.
Absolutely.
Sam was. He was a heck of a guy. Great personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was very, and he could laugh at his own foibles too, you know? There was just regular guy, just shooting the breeze like we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, no pretenses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you knew where to find him. If you had a problem and you wanted to see it, 5 o'clock.
that's it. Yeah. Andy. I remember Andy quite well. Oh, Bob, a couple of things. I suppose that are real challenges. It appears that drunken driving's gone away, but sort of. Impaired driving, however, is with us. How do you handle someone that may or may not be under the influence of drugs?
You know, Bill, that's going to be the problem of the future.
Yeah.
Everybody, is all in favor of legalized marijuana.
I'm not.
No. And I had the opportunity to speak with some people from Colorado, fellow students from the National Academy, and it's becoming a major problem. It's something that society didn't see. People were so overwhelmed with the thought of legalizing marijuana.
It's all happy times.
It's all happy, and it's certainly not.
Well, there's a chemical in marijuana that will stay in your system for like 7 days. So if you're stopped and chemically tested for drugs, it could be something you did 7 days before. So it's going to make enforcing driving impaired due to drugs more and more difficult.
Yeah, it's a challenge facing law enforcement. And I think that the simple solution is to just not legalize marijuana.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know that I turned, I shouldn't be bragging about this, but I turned 74 here recently. I'll bet you I'm the only 74-year-old in Massachusetts that never, ever took drugs, smoked drugs, took a pill or anything.
I don't know about that, Bill.
Well, do you think there may be another one?
I think there's a lot of people out there that never did that.
Well, boy, I'll tell you what, I haven't met them. Everybody says, oh, yeah, once or twice I tried.
Yeah.
But, it's, I'll tell you, Bob, I did a lot of work with the homeless
I remember,
on a
Bill.
voluntary basis.
Yeah. Thank you for that work,
Oh,
Bill.
thank you. You're welcome. It was very rewarding. Very, very good. And if the fellow that was the guy that had started the whole thing had stayed on and hadn't retired due to old age, I'd probably still be doing it. But it was an interesting little group. We had one guy that took care of giving clothing. We used to collect clothing and we'd get it cleaned and we'd give it to the homeless. Another guy was the food guy. Believe it or not, my job was to talk to the people. And I said, come on, you get something better than that for me, don't you? He says, you get the most important job of all. He said, you are probably the only sane person that they are going to talk to today. Well, I put a little different spin on it. So I talked to an awful lot of homeless people. And I've said to them, how did this begin? Budweiser and marijuana. And the magic age, 14.
Yeah.
And I said, now, did marijuana eventually, the fun of it, wear off and you had to go to something stronger? And they said, absolutely. It's a gateway drug.
It sure is.
But the proponents say, oh, no, come on, it's a little fun for a Saturday night or something like that. But I don't see it. I see too many lives that were destroyed.
So many
by that.
lives.
Yeah. Really bad.
Yeah.
Bob, cell phones, texting while you're driving.
What could be done with that?
I see that, unfortunately, too often, including, I went out to get the newspaper this morning. I get 3 newspapers. But the guy from the Attleboro Sun can't swing through my yard and drop it off with the other 2, the Globe and the Herald. He drops it out on the sidewalk. So I have to walk up to the side. Big deal. Huh? That's the worst thing that happens to me. I'm in good shape. But anyway, going down this morning, and here goes a guy in a black Corolla going by.
Oh, yeah. You can see
I could see right into the car and what he was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Bill, I was listening to the radio the other day, and I heard a discussion of a young man who was repenting because he had killed two other young men while texting on the cell phone. And there was an expert in the brain, and he had said that the brain is still engaged for up to 3 seconds after the stimulus of texting. It's still engaged in texting, and so now you're talking minutes.
This is the fellow, I'm sure, Reggie Shaw.
Reggie Shaw, it is,
Yes.
indeed.
And he caused an accident that killed 2 people.
Yeah.
And he said, something I struggle with every day. And he doesn't even remember what he was texting about
Yeah.
when he caused the accident. But here's some, I wasn't going to go over this, but let's go over it anyway. 75% of the people admit in a survey done by AT&T that they do this.
They've done it in the
Yeah.
past.
But here's the thing that really drives you nuts. 43% of the texting drivers say they want to stay connected to friends.
So, Bill, in that discussion, the expert was saying that it goes back to a primeval center in your brain where that you basically have no choice but to respond to that text. The phone text, you have to respond to it.
Yep.
And he went back to like tigers and someone tapping you on the shoulder and the primeval instincts.
I believe that this is
That's
all.
true. Just watch some people with a telephone.
Right,
The
right,
telephone rings.
right.
They have to go answer.
Oh,
it.
yeah.
It bothers them
Yeah,
if they don't answer.
sure.
It's probably some 800 number.
They
anyway
Right,
said that in
indeed.
this survey, a third of the people just did it out of habit, texting while driving. 28% said they were worried about missing out on something important if they don't check their phones right away. More than a quarter believe, this is good, their driving performance is not affected by texting.
That's the scary part.
And just as
That's the
many
scary
people said they believe that others expect them to respond to texts right away. Just 6% answered that they are addicted to texting, although 14% admitted they are anxious if they do not respond to a text right away. And 17% feel a sense of satisfaction when they can read or respond
Again,
to a
going
text
back to
message.
those primeval
That's exactly right, Bob.
centers
It
in the brain.
reinforces exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, proof positive. This is good too. More than a quarter of those who texted while driving believed they can easily do several things at once.
It's probably
Even
more
while
than it's
driving.
probably more than that. Particularly when some of the younger people, they think I can do that, no problem.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that they can multitask.
Yeah.
And it's not,
No.
as we age, we learn that you just can't do that multitasking.
Yeah, single tasking is a bit of a challenge for
The
me.
older
I'll
you get,
tell you.
the more
Well,
challenge
I'm
it
not
is.
sure that it's because you're older that it's a challenge. I think it's you're wiser.
Well, maybe.
You're realizing, hey, I can do 2 things at once, but am I doing 2 things at the best quality?
Exactly. Rather than speed through something and do a crappy job, slow down, make sure you do it right.
Right.
And that's the same idea here. Rather than try to do 2 or 3 things at once and do a lousy job on all
Yeah.
3 of them,
Right.
do one.
2-1.
Bob, I have got one other thing, and I'm going to be able to say that I asked you every single question on my list.
Beautiful.
If you had not become a police officer, what field would you have pursued?
So, Bill, when I was a young man, there were a few things.
Oh, you're still young, Bob.
There were a few things I wanted to do.
Younger.
Okay, when I was a lad, I wanted to be a scientist. I was involved in the science fair in 2nd grade, and first grade I went 2nd place, and I did a project on butterflies and morphing from caterpillars to butterflies. Early gypsy moth stuff. And then farming was a great love and interest of mine. I always enjoyed working on the farm. Some of my best experience, learning experience. And one experience I go back to is a simple little thing like levers. You learn to use levers and, just to think and creative thinking, And then after farming, I always enjoyed carpentry, which probably would have fallen into carpentry. And as I look back now, it would have been, I think, something involved in the trades. I enjoy working with my hands. I think
Handy around the house?
yeah, pretty handy. Yeah, plumber, electrician, something in
Yeah.
the trades, HVAC.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. When you were talking there, I was thinking of one other thing the Army taught me. You know, the Army. Now, I've said this before to people, and people say, oh, yeah, you're really losing it now, Crane. But the two most squared away organizations I've ever seen were the U.S. Army and Disney World.
Disney World.
But I learned, and I remember so much that I picked up in the Army. Basic training. Sergeant Brown was a great guy. Just a great guy. Tough. Crane, get over there and pick up that telephone pole. And I looked at him and he says, well, get going. I go over. I can't, Sarge. You, go over and help him. Both of us. Well, finally, the whole squad went over, 12 guys. We picked it up. He says, what did you learn? You work together. You know, when you're a squad in the Army, you can't go freelancing in combat. You work together. It's just little lessons like that that were great. It's got nothing to do with what we're talking about, but what the heck.
It's a variety show, Bill.
It is. Bob, you're always welcome to come on.
Yeah, thanks. I look forward to coming on again, Bill.
Yeah. And, you know, we can talk about anything you want. Anything you want. By gosh, would certainly.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Yeah. And we certainly would, you know, welcome your opinion on the politics of the day. And we get into all kinds of stuff here, you know. It would be fun to have you on.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks again. And friends, with many thanks to Katie Woodhams for another terrific job and for making a prime rib dinner out of the oatmeal that is our show. Bob, Dwayne, and I wish you a very cordial good evening, and thank you very, very much for appearing with us. It moves the class factor up quite a bit here, too.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share my experiences with you, Bill.
It was great. It was
Thank you,
great
man.
having
I was
you.
impressed. I had no idea it was that involved.
Yeah, thank you.
I didn't know it was 10 weeks either.
Yeah.
So now, folks, I have the sad duty to tell you that it is time for our time with you is up, and we must leave you. But wipe away those tears, put down that whiskey bottle, and think good thoughts, and within a fortnight, we'll be back with a veritable bushel barrel of good stuff. Good night now.